Today's episode is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/figureoutyourlife. With over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, and Kindle. Now let's get to the show. Welcome to Figure Out Your Life podcast, the podcast where we try to find the answers to life's everyday questions. I'm your host, Toya T, aka Toya T with a PhD, aka your sister from another mister, aka your friend that will stick with you till the end unless you cross me, aka the traveling Toya. She may wander, but she is never lost. AKA, yes, I'm single, still single, and looking. Let me stop. All right, guys, welcome back. It has been an interesting first 2 months of 2020. As much as I had these great plans to be like super consistent, you know, life happens. As y'all know, last month, I ended up having an unexpected trip to the Caribbean, particularly to the island of Dominica, because of my grandmother's passing, and having to attend that funeral. And then this month, which it wasn't an unexpected trip because I had bought the tickets in November from Black Friday, but I took a 2-week trip to Thailand and didn't quite figure out how I was going to get my podcast episodes out. So I did record one. That was the last episode. And when I listened back to it, I was like, ooh, listen to all that background noise. And even though I recorded it like super early in the morning before construction started, before any other hotel guests were up, I was just like, I don't think I like the quality of the sound, but I guess done is better than perfect, but I'm still learning that. So it has taken me some time to get to this episode, even though I wrote out the outline for this episode while I was in Thailand, which was absolutely amazing. If you want to see more about my trip, I suggest that you go over to my Instagram, which is Latoya, Latoyat on Instagram, and you can see some stuff there. I also plan to post, details about my trip on the blog. And I just haven't done it yet because it's just been so crazy since I've come back. So just give me some time. But again, we are working on done, even if it's a little late, even if it's not perfect, trying to get things out. So this is podcast number 2 for February. And if I can, since it is a leap year and we have 29 days in February, I'm going to see if I can squeeze out another podcast. I am not promising, because I realize when I promise things, sometimes I don't always fulfill them, especially if it's not life or death. And, I spent 2 weeks in Thailand, most of February out of the country. And then I came back and I've been completely off on my sleep schedule. I was off in Thailand too. So this whole month, I've just not been sleeping the way that I regularly do, which is, actually waking up at normal morning hours, not 4:00 in the morning. Like, okay, so I'm awake. So anyway, that's all for the updates on me and what's been going on. We're going to go straight into this week's topic, which I'm sure you already know because you read the title of the episode, which is figuring out how to reimagine single life, or figuring out reimagining a single life. I haven't even really thought that out, but you see what the title is. We're talking about reimagining single life. And if you can tell from the title, I fully intended for this podcast to come out the week of Valentine's Day. So it would have come out before Valentine's Day. But again, I was in Thailand. And so it just didn't come out. But I have been sitting on this one for a while. I had listened to a podcast episode by Dr. Joy, her very popular, very well-known podcast, Therapy for Black Girls. Absolutely love her. Definitely check out her show, and I will put a link to the actual episode I'm talking about in the show notes. But she had an episode about being single, particularly about singlehood and reimagining it. And she had oh my gosh, I did not. Did I write her name down? Yes, I did. So in the episode, she had this sociologist speaking. I'm assuming she's a sociologist. Let me not put that title on her, but she does have a doctorate. So Dr. Jessica D. Moore-Mann, she does research that examines the media's role in Black women's gender and sexual socialization, particularly the process by which a person acquires their attitudes and beliefs about sex, dating, gender roles, and relationships. And in her interview with Dr. Joy, she actually just talked about, how people's ideas about singlehood and where that comes from, and particularly about Black single women, like how people view them, how that affects how Black single women actually see themselves and how they approach relationships and dating. And I thought it was just so fascinating. I had to bookmark it to do for the month of February, because I was like, oh, that'd be so great for Valentine's Day. And I already passed Valentine's Day, but it's still relevant because this is not a Valentine's Day themed topic. It's just a topic that would fit very well with Valentine's Day, especially since when we look around, single people are too often stereotyped and stigmatized in the media. Like, I don't understand why they're always coming for single people. Like, most people don't spend most of their lives being single. If you come out the womb with a romantic partner, then great for you. I guess you were in an arranged marriage from birth. And even in those situations, you're not really in a relationship until you get married. So you're single. You might be betrothed, but you're single. But single people pretty much have gotten this stigma. They are pitied while married people are celebrated. And, as a Black woman, and particularly a Black woman with a PhD, a Black woman without any kids, a Black woman with degrees. I just like saying that, with degrees, because I got a master's too. Let me not act like I don't also have a master's in sociology. Let me just toot my own horn, toot, toot, beep, beep. It is Black History Month. As a Black woman with degrees and no kids in my 30s, who prefers to date Black men, and trust me, I'm open to dating other races. It's just like, again, the sources I'm using to meet men is like online dating, and I'm going off of like what I am attracted to, which is Black men. I've only dated Black men. I prefer Black men, but like I'm open to dating, other races. I live in Boston, so I've looked at white men, particularly on the Bumble app, and I'm like, okay, let me look through like your friends, like who do you hang out with? And like, a warning sign for me is like I look through it and they only have white male friends on there. I'm like, okay, so you don't have a diverse group of friends, or not enough for you to put on your Bumble app, even though you shouldn't have pictures of you with other people on your dating online dating profiles. And I talked about that in the episode about figuring out online dating, so you can go check that out. And I give you tips about how to put out a good online dating profile. But I look through the stuff and I'm like, okay, that's not gonna work. Like, I think, for me, if I end up dating outside my race, it probably would have to, you probably would have to show me that you have a diverse group of friends, which would make me think that you have a mindset that is that actually includes people of color and people who are not in the dominant group, and that as Rihanna said at the NAACP Image Awards when she received the President's Award, if you have non-Black friends, she said, tell them to pull up when issues affecting people of color occur. And that's what I'm looking for. If I'm going to date somebody who's not Black, you better show me that you're going to pull up when stuff hits the fan. So I'm looking, but people don't seem to really give you points for looking. They're interested in, do you have a romantic partner? Are you married? Are you engaged? Like, what's going on, especially when you're in your 30s. It almost becomes a key defining characteristic that evokes unsolicited advice from married friends. Luckily, my married friends, like my real friends, my friends who are married, not, married couples that I just meet, or just like, associates, or, second tier friends. I'm talking about like people who know my business. I know their business. I went to their weddings. I go to all their, big life events. And so I really don't have, advice, unsolicited advice coming from my married friends, particularly my married female friends, even my married male friends. If I want advice, I'll ask them and they'll give it to me, but I don't get unsolicited advice. But I do have friends who are in my friend group who have tried to be like, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? And it's like, ooh, girl, what's going on with your dating life? And I was like, do I talk to you? Like, where did the conversation go when you see people who are not in your immediate friend group, people who you don't text, every week, or, is not in your group chat. And when they first see you for the first time in like a while at an event, and they're like, hey, how you doing? How's your dating life? And it's like, this is private information. So why are you asking? And I feel because, there's this idea about singlehood and single people, that people who are in relationships feel like they have the right to start asking you invasive questions, which is funny because I feel like it's also the opposite way too. Not necessarily single people asking married people questions, but like when people get married, everyone feels like they have some kind of right to ask them questions. Like, when you gonna have babies? When you gonna do this? And I've been guilty of that, but with my close friends, like, sometimes it really is just like, oh, I just want to know, like, it's a question I want to ask, but not that I'm saying like you need to have a baby right now after you just got married, but you get what I mean. But I also have experienced, like, when you are single and you have, no kids, no degrees, and you're in your 30s, there's also this distrust that comes from that characteristic, that singlehood, that single stigma. Distrust from the partners of male friends particularly. So I've had some issues with a few. Now, I won't say several, because several, is more than, 5, more than you can count on your hand. But I've had issues with a few of the partners of my male friends, my close male friends, my high school male friends. And one of them in particular, it really was because I was the single girl in the group that hung out with the group. And she actually accused me of flirting with her boyfriend in front of her at a group event. And I was just shocked. Like, I was like, what, when did I do that? Anyone let me know when did that occur? And it became so much of an issue that male friend actually called me and addressed it. And I was like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, let me know if I pulled you into a lap dance or like full out try to kiss you at this event, because if not, your girl is projecting her insecurities on me, and tell her to leave me alone. And so those are the kind of issues that I've also had too, where you have distrust from females when you are friends with their with their boyfriends or husbands, and you also have this this image or this stigma of the hurry and get a man before they're all gone speeches, or not even stigma. You also receive the hurry and get a man before they are all gone speeches from your mother. Well, particularly, I know I've gotten that speech from my mother of like, you better hurry up before they're all gone. And I was like, how can all of the men in the world be gone? I know that women outnumber men in the world, but it's not like they don't exist. Like, it's not like there is a finite number of men and I'm going to miss out because there's 1,000 men and there's 1,001 women, and 99 of the men have been taken so far. And so I'm going to be fighting all these people for that one that's left. It's like, no, what are you talking about? But, singledom, it is not a disease. Okay. Although it's treated like some kind of like, like the coronavirus, like it's something contagious. Like if you spend too much time around a single person, if you're married, or if you're in a relationship, that the singledom will rub off on them and they will become single too. It is not a disease or a life sentence. It's not something that's going to last forever. It's not something that you have been punished with. Single life is what you make of it. I'm going to tell you that again. I'm going to say it again. Single life is what you make of it. It can be tremendously meaningful and fulfilling if you actually enjoy and actually don't treat it like it's a life sentence or a disease. It can, I really dare you to think about what life might look like if we reimagined and redefined our image of the single people, of singlehood, of single life, especially since, I'm speaking as a Black woman, as a single Black woman. I am daring you. I am asking you to try to reimagine your ideas about single women and particularly single Black women. Like, change it all up. Stop with the spinsters and the cat ladies and the man eaters and stop with the, she's going to be desperate for a man and she needs to be married, or, I'm talking in very heteronormative ways, but, again, I'm speaking from my experience, but I'm trying to make it as broad as possible. But regardless, people, you always get it. Like, oh my gosh, like you need to be with somebody. Let's try to reimagine that people who are single aren't desperate and aren't in need of a relationship. And again, as I said, this episode is very much inspired by the Therapy for Black Girls episode with Dr. Jessica D. Mormon. I definitely suggest that you check out her Instagram, and I'll put the information in the show notes for Dr. Mormon, or just look her up and look up her research, because it sounds very fascinating. I can't wait till she comes out with her book, because I think it will be very, very groundbreaking in terms of like the narratives that have been created about single women, and particularly about single Black women, about how to how to tackle that. So, all right, so let's start by examining the messages that we get about dating and relationships from the 5 major agents of socialization. This is how we're going to tackle this, because I don't know if Dr. Mormon is a sociologist, but I know I am. And I always pull from my research background. And that's why, I always start off with, I'm Toya T with a PhD, because I am Toya T with a PhD, and I can't separate that from myself. And so the best way to do this, and I like the way that they set it up in Therapy for Black Girls, is to like start from like the source. So let's start examining, where do these messages come from about dating and relationships? And I'm looking at it particularly from the view of socialization. So if you don't know what socialization is, this is a term that's used in sociology. And for my students, if you listen to me, this should be familiar to you, especially if you've taken Intro to Sociology with me. So socialization is a process that starts at birth and continues through the lifespan of a human. Each person learns values, beliefs, and social norms through socialization. This process also influences a person's identity and role within society. Okay, so in other words, this is how you learn how to be a human. And there are 5 major agents of socialization, meaning 5 different areas in your life where you learn how to be a human being in certain settings, in your society, in your culture, in your family. And the 5 major agents are family, school, peers, work, and media. And so I'm going to go through all of them and see, how they have impacted or helped to develop these ideas, the ideas you may have for yourself about dating and relationships. And I will, of course, use myself as an example, because I can't live outside myself. So family. We start off with family first, because it is the first agent of socialization for everyone. Whoever raised you and allowed you to grow up to adulthood, to the point that you're able to listen to this. These are the first people that you have had interactions with. They are the first people to kind of help you and guide you. They taught you how to talk by talking to you. They taught you how to walk by encouraging you and picking you up when you fell down. And that's why they're the most important, is because what your family has taught you, they've taught you really by the words and actions that they have shown you, the words and actions about relationships and being single. So the question that I'm asking is, what has your family taught you by words and actions about relationships and being single? So what did you observe? What did you hear them to say about relationships, and particularly about singlehood? So for me, I grew up in a single mother household. I've said this several times. And I saw that as normal, not as abnormal, not as something that is degenerate, not as something that is a problem, an epidemic, no matter what these political pundits would like to say. Back in the 80s, it was like a huge thing about like, oh my God, single mothers, the 80s and the 70s and the 60s. Particularly among the Black community. I didn't see it as that. I didn't see it as something that was something wrong with my mother, because I lived in a single mother household and some of my friends had 2-parent households. I just saw it as like, this is just how my family life is. And my mother didn't date much, so I never got a sense that I needed to have a man. I mean, I'm not saying my mother did not date, but she didn't date, like, she wasn't a serial dater bringing men in and out of the house that would give me the idea that she constantly needed a man, and that I therefore also constantly needed a man, or constantly needed to be in a relationship or looking for someone. I saw her as hardworking. She worked 2 jobs. She took care of me. She spoiled me as much as she could, even though she tried to say, like, well, you knew that money didn't grow on trees. I was like, yeah, I know, but I also knew that I will get what I want. Christmas, birthdays, come on. I'm going to get it. That's why I remember everything that I didn't get. So that's another subject. But, so I saw that, but I also grew up seeing my married maternal grandparents, because the first, memories of my life started off in Dominica with my maternal grandparents. I think I've said that also before. And I also saw that as normal, as, my grandmother and my grandfather are married, they live together. And I saw that as normal too. And I didn't see, one as more normal or better than the other as a young child. I just really didn't. And as opposed to, one of my college friends, like, this is a different experience. That's what I'm saying. Like, you have to pay attention to your family as the first and most important agent of socialization for you around the ideas about relationships and singlehood. Because for me, I saw both, and neither were stigmatized. Neither was like, well, why don't you hurry up and get a man, so that you can, raise this child right. I never heard those kind of things being said in my family by my aunts or uncles or my grandparents. So, and then I saw my grandparents. I never saw people saying, like, well, this is the epitome of relationships. Like, you need to be with somebody and married. I didn't see that, but in juxtaposition, I have a friend from college who pretty much was talking about that most of the people in her family were married. Like, they completely pushed marriage. They talked about the importance of being married before you have children. So they have very few children in her family because it is something that is seen that is done when you are married. And so if you take longer to get married, you don't have children as early, which means that you're probably going to have less children. So she had pointed that out to me and said that, that was a very major value in her family. And that was something that was taught to her, from when she was younger. And it's not a surprise that she is also married. I'm not saying because her family pushed marriage, that's why she's married and I'm not, because there's plenty of people that I know who, didn't have that same circumstances. But what I'm saying is that the conversations I've had with her, she has mentioned this, and I was like, well, I don't have that, that same kind of thought process, because there's no stigma in my family about those who are married with kids and those who are single with kids. They're treated the same, and there's no, a pressuring of, being in a relationship and married before you have children. If that was the case, I would not be here. So, but one thing that my mother did emphasize was education. She highly emphasized it over romantic relationships. So I was given the impression that I shouldn't have a boyfriend or be in a relationship until I was out of school, particularly high school. Because we never had a solid conversation about it, I also assumed into college. So I never told my parents, particularly my mother, what I actually was in relationships as a high school student, because she had said it to me so many times that, you should be focusing on education and not a relationship, that I saw that as something that was bad. And, teenagers love to do things that are bad. So I was like, I'm just going to keep this under the rug, and make her, she can make assumptions for herself, but I had never had that experience of saying, like, hey, mom and dad, this is my boyfriend, even though, I went to 2 senior proms, because I dated a senior when I was a junior, and my own junior prom with, I went to my junior prom, I went to my junior prom with my boyfriend. I went to my boyfriend's senior prom. And then I also went, when I was a senior, I went to my senior prom with a different boyfriend. And so it wasn't like I was with somebody during these times. And so it wasn't like I wasn't dating. I just wasn't, expressing that. Even if they came to the house, picked me up, and we took pictures and all that stuff. Never a conversation, just never, just didn't talk about it. But, I got that from the kind of ways that the words, that the actions that she used, and like, so how she acted herself in regards to relationships, and the things that she told me had a very significant impact on how I viewed relationships and when to start dating, and about singlehood. And so I didn't really even tell my parents I was dating until I was in graduate school. That's how much of an effect that kind of emphasis of education over romantic relationships was on me. And now I have no problems talking to my parents about dating because, of course, now, as I said, I'm getting the "you better hurry up and get a man before they're all gone" speeches now from my mom, and my dad is hinting at the fact that he would like some grandchildren because he's getting older and all his friends have grandchildren, it seems. And I'm like, damn, I feel bad, but it's like, no, this is my life, my body. So what am I feeling bad about? Like, things happen when they're supposed to happen, and I can't be having kids for other people. So let's move on to the second agent of socialization, which is school. So as you can tell, this goes in order of the way that you mature as a human being. So your first contact was with your family, and that's why it's the first and most important agent of socialization. And then the next one is school, because that's usually, if you are not homeschooled, that's the place where you have contact with other adults that have a significant impact on you and other people, so children outside of your family. And so this may vary, again, based on your school experiences. So think about for yourself how your schools dealt with Valentine's Day and sex education when you're in it for high school level. So just think about how they dealt with it. Did they allow you to hold hands with, when you're, younger, with the opposite or the same sex? Did they allow you to hold hands, on school property? Did they allow you to make out, in front of teachers, or were you reprimanded? Did they have sex education, or did they preach abstinence? Did they distinguish between married and single faculty by using certain titles? So was there in the school the use of Mrs. MRS to indicate that the female teacher is married, and Miss, MISS or MS, to indicate that this person is not married? Or did you have to call your teachers like, headmaster or teacher Jane or whatever? Or was everyone giving, even if they're married, a general title of like Miss, or which is MS, not MISS, because MISS means that you're single completely. So did you have to use Miss whether people are married or not, so you don't distinguish between who's married and who's not married? And so really think about how your school handled that. I know for me, in the schools I went to, so I went to a Catholic school from kindergarten into sixth grade, and as you can imagine, there was a emphasis on like the religious aspect of relationships, so being married, because that's the way things are supposed to be in the eyes of God. But there was not necessarily, as I can remember, discussions about sex education because we were still young. So that, I didn't have that. And for the boyfriend girlfriend thing, I never really saw people being reprimanded. Like I saw people holding hands, and you can kind of tell like people had puppy love because, my school went from kindergarten to eighth grade. So you had, actual middle schoolers around. But I didn't really see anything that said that relationships were bad and being in relationships were bad. From the 7th to the 12th grade, I attended a public exam school. And even there, I didn't really see anything that said that you shouldn't be in relationships. That's where I had the majority of my relationships, was in this school that I spent 6 years in. And I never like got in trouble with, teachers on campus because I was kissing somebody or holding hands with somebody in the hallways. And then even talking about sex education, we had a sex education lesson as a part of our health class, but I don't remember any details because I don't think they really taught it. They gave us some old funky textbook, and I think we talked about it for like 1 or 2 classes and never talked about it again. Got no real information. And the funny thing is that I don't remember if we had the sex and sex and condoms and the sex talk at the school, but I know they had the sex talk with the 7th graders when I was a senior. Think about that. And so, and there were like, pregnant teenagers when I was in high school. Not a lot, but But they weren't pushed out of the school. From my knowledge, they weren't pushed out of the school. So I never really got that sense about being single or being in a relationship from that. But where it may have come from, and is the third agent of socialization, is peers. So your peers usually come from your school, and your first schoolmates. And so think about what kind of relationships did you see your friends engaging in when you were growing up, and even now, like what kind of relationships are they in? Because that will affect how you view relationships and single life and dating. And was there an emphasis on hooking up or relationship? So I know for my generation, it wasn't an emphasis on hooking up. Like people were very much into like boyfriend, girlfriend, or girlfriend. There wasn't a lot of gay couples in my high school because I went to high school in the 90s, and it's not as open as it is now. But what I'm saying is that I know among my friends, like it was like, oh, you dating somebody for like a week, you date somebody on the phone, like, yeah, that's my boyfriend. We never go out, but we talk on the phone every day. Sound like catfish, but this was catfish before there was actually a reason for it to be called catfish, because there was no video phones, and there was no like computers really and stuff like that. So you couldn't say that it was fake. Like you met somebody on the phone, you're like, oh, you cute. You got a little boyfriend or girlfriend over the phone. And maybe you dated somebody for a month or two. Like with my circle of friends from high school, there is like maybe 2 degrees of separation, 2 or 3 degrees of separation of like, I dated that person, you dated that person too, you hooked up with that person, I hooked up with that person. And even now, as we're getting older and people, may have started to reconnect with people, it's like, it's just really messy. Just really messy. But there wasn't like a super emphasis on just like hooking up and not being in relationships when I was in school and among my peers. Even now as an adult, like there's not a shunning of people who just are into hookups, but at this point, like most of my friends aren't on that tip. They are looking to be in serious relationships. And so that also kind of colors my view on relationships and singlehood. But I know for today's generation, these kids are, I don't know, I feel like they're mostly focused on hooking up and seeing how many people they can have sex with or oral sex with or whatever, and not really an emphasis on like relationships, because now they have like a new idea about what relationships are and stuff like that. But I can't speak on that because I'm not this new young generation that went to high school in the 2000s, or not even 2000s, the 2010s. I can even say 2000s because I was in college in the 2000s. So my last year, I graduated in 2001 from high school. So I guess a little bit of the 2000s, but not really. But we're 20 years into the 2000s, the new century, and I feel like it's a completely different ball game, especially with teaching and having close contact with high school and college students. It is kids that were born in the 2000s. I'm like, what are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? But so think about how your peers kind of shape your ideas about relationships and singlehood. Did people go to the prom as groups or dates? Like for me, my high school, as I said, like there was an emphasis on relationships. So like almost everybody had a date when we went to like proms. Even for our first like formal dance, which is the sophomore semi-formal, people had dates there. At least I had a date, and I talked about it in Shooting Your Shot, how I asked this friend of mine to be my date, because like that's how I viewed it. Like you go to these dances and you have a date. You don't go as a person by yourself or with groups. But now I think I've seen more younger people showing their prom pictures, and they went by themselves or they went with a group of friends, and I'm like, oh, that's different. But that shows you an emphasis not on relationships but on just like being yourself and not being forced to be in a relationship. So think about that. So when work, this is the fourth agent of socialization. Do they show preference over single or married employees? Think about your workplace. Are you seeing more people who are married getting promotions, or are you seeing more single people getting promotions, or are you seeing it being pretty much even among single and married people? Although it is illegal to ask these things, you can see, like ask someone while hiring them if they're married or not married. You can always see it in practice. So that's what I mean. Like if you see more married people getting promoted, that will pretty much like indirectly tell you that they view marriage as more important than being single. And what kind of events do they have at your workplace, like outside of work? Do they have family day? Do they have holiday parties where you can bring your partner? Like what kind of events? Because if they have a lot of family oriented events, as opposed to just like a mixture of family events for those who have families, and like, regular fun events that anybody can come to, you can also see what they're emphasizing in terms of relationships. Because if there's a lot of family oriented events, they're saying that they're emphasizing that we think that our employees should be married or have families. And so we're going to create these events that support that. And those who don't have that will not be able to engage in this. And so that will kind of make them want to, hurry up and get a family or get into a relationship so they can engage in this. So, also, what are the status of those in high positions? So if you see people in the highest positions as mostly married, that also shows something. I'm only saying this because there is a fact. When I taught social inequality a couple of years ago, I had learned this interesting fact that I talked about with my students, which is that married men and single women without kids gain the most value in terms of hiring and promotion. As in, when they're talking about hiring somebody or promoting someone. So let's just go to, hiring and promoting. For men, those who are married have a leg up over those who are single because they see married men as being more stable, more responsible, and very much deserving of high pay and high positions because they have a family to take care of. That still that idea, this patriarchal idea of the man as the head of the household. And so if he does have a household, you have to reward him for doing that, for following that pattern, as opposed to a single man they see as irresponsible, as someone who is, spending their money on drinks and all kinds of things that aren't important. And so that's why they put married men above single men. But for women, it's the opposite. There is you see more single women being hired and promoted over women with children or who are married, because there's this idea that if a woman has children, again, going into patriarchy, that her job is to take care of her children. And so if she is someone who has children or intends to have children and she's not married, if she's someone who has children or is intending to have children, then her focus is going to be outside of the workplace. And so you don't want to promote somebody who's maybe going to go on maternity leave, oh my gosh, to take care of the human beings that we have to produce to continue the human race. But okay. But they usually get, like, they might have to leave work early to go pick up their sick kids or pick up their kids from school, or, they might have other kind of obligations to family life as opposed to work life. And so for single people, single women, they tend to promote them more and hire them at a higher rate, because there's the idea that, they don't have a distraction outside of work to prevent them from doing their job and doing it well. And so let's promote that and reward that kind of behavior, which is funny, again, when you look at the wider society and their images about women, like singlehood, and how singlehood in itself, when you look at, and this is going to go into the media presentations of representations, which is the last agent of socialization, of how they portray single men and single women, how we treat single men and single women. A single man, think about it. What do we call a single man? If he's like, if he's over the age of 35, 40, 50, if you're a man and you're single and you don't have kids, what do people call you? A playboy, right? They're like, oh, he's a playboy. He is a longtime bachelor. And that's fine. I mean, think about George Clooney. It took him a long time, and he was married before, but he spent a long time being single, didn't have kids until way later in life. And no one was talking about, oh, poor George Clooney. They were like, oh, look at him dating all these young girls, these young women, these beautiful women. And then he finally found one that, that locked him down. And I think it's interesting that she is a lawyer, and then all this other stuff. So when he did find himself a woman, he found himself a good woman that had her head on completely right, her business together, and I guess kind of changed his ideas about family because he didn't have a kid until way later in life. Look at Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm giving like white examples, but just off the top of my head. No one is calling him some kind of spinster and feeling bad for him, even though he's in his 40s and he is still single. He's never been married and he doesn't have children, but he's still seen as this eligible bachelor. That's the word I was looking for, eligible bachelor. But when you have single women and you're over the age of 30, I'm going to go even lower because the bar moves again because of gender differences. For women, it's like if you are single and you're above the age of 30 and don't have kids and blah, 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 you're a spinster, you're a potential cat lady, you're, someone who can't be in a relationship. There must be something wrong with you. And there's like this kind of like sad kind of image. And so think about the TV and movies that you see. So I just talked about pop culture and what gets portrayed in media. Like, oh my gosh, look at the eligible bachelor. And then it's like, oh, she's still single. She's single again. Which is like, okay, why is it different for men and women? But also look at like movies and TV shows. They love to make some movies about the single woman that is trying to get married by some crazy time period, like, oh, I have 30 days to get married. And I can mention a couple of movies. I know that Flight Plan with, oh my gosh, what is Robin Thicke's ex-wife's name? Paula Patton. They had Flight Plan where her sister was getting married, I think, and then she was trying to get engaged before her younger sister got married because she was over 30, and she's like, oh my gosh, my sister's under 30 and she's getting married, and that means that I'm a spinster and something's wrong with me, so I must get married. So she was flying all over the place because she was a flight attendant. That's why it's called Flight Plan or something like that. Don't quote me on the name of that movie. It's something flight something. But she was flying all over the place and meeting up with ex-boyfriends because she was so desperate. And that is exactly how it was portrayed. So desperate to get married or engaged before her younger sister got married. So she didn't come off as some kind of spinster. And even though that is a horrible message to put out, at the end, she still ends up with somebody. She ends up with someone that was not on the list of people that she was flying all over the place to meet. It was somebody else, but there's still at the end of the day that message of like that, she may not get the person that she wanted, but she will get somebody. There was also like, there's another movie. There's quite a few of them. I'm not saying another movie. There was the movie I'm thinking of is with Kristen Bell, where she was like this high powered, like maybe party planner, and her sister got married again, younger sister got married. And she threw a coin. Her younger sister got married in Italy, and she threw a coin into that fountain. It's supposed to be like fountain of love. Or she took 3 coins out of there, and the men who were attached to those coins came, were like pursuing her like in a very crazy way because they were under some kind of enchantment because of the fountain. But that was a whole thing about like her having to get married. Like there's all these movies and television shows about single people that is always a comedy. Like it's never just like, okay, they just happen to be single and they sometimes date and they sometimes don't. But they have other things going on in their life because it's a joke when people are single. When they're married, you can have like the jokes about being married, but it's usually the emphasis is that it's good that they stay together. Like, oh, they're married, but they have like these funny relationship issues, and then they meet up with their married friends, or they have that one crazy single friend that they, have to ridicule because the single friend is always the one. When you have those shows with married couples, like the comedies, the single friend is always some kind of like comedic relief, like super comedic relief, where they're like constantly dating. Like, oh, I'm gonna go on a date. I'm gonna come back out on the date. Like think about Family Matters. And Rachel and how she was constantly dating. I know that was a throwback cultural reference there, and so if you got it, great. But she was constantly, dating, and that was a whole like storyline for her. Like her only storyline was that she was dating and she had a child, and her husband had died, and then she was out there dating. But they always have this emphasis on just like it just being so crazy. Also think about the books. And so I'm particularly thinking about, that's why I like Dr. Jessica Mormon and what I heard from her interview with Dr. Joy on Therapy for Black Girls, that she was talking about like, her research and how she's going to write this up about how to reimagine singlehood, particularly in the, in the after years of the Steve Harvey book of the Think Like a Man, Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man, whatever. And that whole book craze, and that's how Steve Harvey went from, being very popular within the Black Hollywood community, Black entertainment community, to being, somebody with NBC shows and talk shows, because he had gotten this, a lot of publicity from writing this book, which is funny because he's been married 3 times and he treated the first 2 wives like dog poo poo. Okay. And, it's really funny that he wrote this book, because he now has like this young stepdaughter, Lori Harvey. I don't know if I've talked about her before. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't, but you've probably heard her name. And she's dating like every single like eligible bachelor within the Black entertainment and Hollywood community. Diddy, Trey Songz, Future. I think she had dated that Black Formula One racer over in, I think, Lewis Hamilton. That's what she also dated. Maybe not him, but she also dated like somebody else. Like, she's been dating all these guys, and it's so funny. I'm like, is this how she thinks like a man and acts like a lady, or are we past that era, or is it for everyone but the people in your family? Because during that time, there were so many like think pieces and news reports and like CNN specials about Black single women and what's wrong, and is this an epidemic, and does it have to do with the prison industrial complex and how there's mass incarceration of Black men, so there's less Black men out there for Black women who want to date Black men, and is it also a cause of Black men dating outside of their race at a higher rate than Black women, and are Black women dumb for not dating outside their race because their male counterparts, if they're heterosexual, are doing that at a higher rate, and they're going to get left behind if they're waiting for Black men who aren't checking for them or waiting for them. All these things. But it was just such a strong focus on the single Black woman, and like examining the single Black woman and trying to understand, why the single Black woman is single. Like, it was like some guy, like I said, again, like it's like a disease, like they're trying to cure cancer or cure AIDS. And it's like, we're also trying to cure single Black femalehood. Like, what the hell? And also, just one more reference on the media. If you're a Tyler Perry fan, almost all of Tyler Perry movies end with a woman meeting a good man and cheating, or like looking for a good man. Like, they've been dogged out by some guy. It's usually a dark-skinned man. He has a colorism issue, I swear to God. It's always being dogged out by some darker-skinned man, and that at the end, she gets with a light-skinned Black man that treats her right. Or if she is sexually promiscuous, or she's cheating on her good man, quote-unquote good man, then she'll be punished in the end. So I'm thinking of, what was that? The movie with Journey Smollett, Temptations, where she was like, she was like a sex therapist or a marriage therapist, and she was cheating on her husband. And at the end, it didn't turn out very well for her, but the husband got his, like happy ending because he didn't cheat on her. And it's like, okay, all right. And then in The Family That Prays, Sanaa Lathan's character cheated on her husband in the movie. And at the end, the husband, ends up with this like great happy ending, and she ends up with this like horrible, you should have learned your lesson and not cheated on your husband and treated him horrible at the end. So like, it's like message loud and clear. We get it. Okay. So you can get that from all different places. Another thing I want you guys to think about when trying to reimagine single life is, how can we challenge and recreate some of these narratives for ourselves? Like, so I just pointed out where we got them from 5 sources, the 5 agents of socialization. But now, how can we challenge and recreate some of these narratives for ourselves about single life and relationships? So 1, I suggest that we learn how to shut down family. Do not badger. Like, learn how to deal with family members that want to give you that, like, when you gonna get married, girl, talk, or when you gonna get married, son. But again, I can't talk for how males experience this. I'm telling you how a female experiences this, and how I particularly experience this constant talk of like, when you gonna get married? Who are you seeing? What's going on with your love life? And it's like, okay, why are we having this conversation at Thanksgiving dinner or Easter? Like, leave me alone. Okay, leave me alone. But for ourselves, if you are married or in a relationship, do not badger your single members of your family. Do not badger them. Do not badger them. And then just in life, don't badger your single friends either. Don't come at me. I'm put this episode out, and I'm sure, a friend or two who listens to this, maybe not the ones, they know. I don't think any of my friends who listen to this is gonna come back and be like, "So, girl, like, what's going on with your love life?" Just to be, an asshole, which is something I would do. Just saying. But do not badger them. Do not give unsolicited advice. Again, if someone asks you and they're single for advice, like, go ahead and give it to them. Like, I am really close to asking friends to, like, hook me up with their single friends. But, like, again, I don't want to make that like a blast out. Like, I'd rather pick the friends that I know have good judgment and be like, so do you have any single friends? But I feel like they would have told me. But then again, I might be assuming that they're just being, good friends. To me, by not, presenting people or trying to set me up without my permission. So I might do that. But again, don't badger your single friends or your single family members. For those who, again, if you're single, do not avoid events because you don't have a romantic partner or a date. Like, so I was talking about the prom and how now, like, kids seem to be good, like, very comfortable going by themselves or going with groups. Like, pretty much, I don't know, if I didn't have a date, I don't know if I would have gone to my proms, because I very much saw it as something that you have a date, that you go to proms with a date. But now that I'm older, a lot of my friends have gotten married in the last couple of years. I have gone to, like, almost every single wedding, as a single person. Even when sometimes I've gone as a date of a male friend, or brought one of my female friends as my date, or as my plus one. Like, now I have no problem going to these weddings by myself. But I think that is more acceptable because there's this idea that single women go to weddings to meet single men and to catch the bouquet and become the next person that gets married. And some of that is true and some of it's not true. I mean, at this point in time in my life, I'm coming to see, like, do you got single friends? Because I am interested. But if you don't, do you have an open bar and good food? Because and good music, because I'm about to have the time of my life. The last wedding I went to is my friend Jamoki's, and I had already asked him ahead of time, like, you got single friends coming to this? And he was like, pretty much not really. And I was like, okay, so cut that off my list. And for the ones that were single, I knew them. They went to college with me, and I was like, something happens. But if not, there is going to be good food, good drinks, and good music. And I had the time of my life just being Toya T. But I think that's a little bit more accepted. But I'm also talking about just, like, events in general. Like, wanting to check out a new restaurant that looks, like, really good, or wanting to go see a movie, or wanting to go, do anything that you feel that you need to do it with a romantic partner. Don't avoid those events. Just go. Take yourself out. That's something that I said I was going to start doing in 2020. I only did it once so far because, I've been traveling more than I expected. And so, but I'm really committed to at least taking myself out on a date once a month, because I don't need to be waiting on no man, because I'm interested in men, anybody to go anywhere. I already went through the barrier of, like, going to the movies by myself. I have no problem going to the movies by myself, although I will not go during dating hours. So I won't go on a Friday night. I won't go on a Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening. I will go during the week, in the morning, in the afternoon, and at night, like during the week, but not during dating hours, because I don't want to be that person. Even though, like, again, I don't think anybody's judging me, but it's just more comfortable not going during dating hours. But if that's the showtime that's available for a popular movie, I'm going. Like, I'm not letting not having someone to go with me stop me from doing things. And the same thing about, like, for restaurants and stuff, like, you bookmark, like, oh, that looks like a nice restaurant. Oh, they got nice drinks. I'm gonna put that down for when I have a date. And it's like, no, just go take yourself out on a date, and you might actually meet somebody, depending on where you sit, if you, like, sit at the bar or stuff like that. But it shouldn't be the focus. The focus should be just, if you want to go, just go. Don't let not having, not being in a relationship stop you from doing the things that you want to do. If you want to travel and you think that, especially now that we have this idea about vacations, B-A-E, bae, going on a vacation with your bae, and all these romantic, destinations like the Maldives and the Seychelles, and and Fiji and all this stuff. Okay, they might be romantic, and there might be a lot of couples there. They might have a lot of hotels that cater to romantic couples, but who cares? Just go. Just go. If you want to put rose petals on my bed in the hotel that I check into by myself because I want to go to the Maldives and live my life before I don't have life, then fine. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll take the 2 glasses of champagne too because I'll drink them both myself. But don't let that stop you. Just go. Go out with yourself. Take yourself out. Go out with your friends and focus on your friendships. Focus on those relationships. How can you be good friends to your friends? How can you strengthen those relationships? And see that not as a substitute for a relationship, but as an important relationship in your life. Because if you can't be in a relationship with your friends and with yourself, then you are not ready to be in a relationship with somebody else. You really aren't, because I really do think that the foundations for a relationship is a good friendship. And if you don't know how to be a good friend, and you don't know how to treat yourself well, then you won't know how to treat somebody else well, and you won't know how to be a friend and build a strong foundation with somebody who you're romantically interested in. Also, encourage neutral titles. So this is another tip for how we can reimagine and recreate narratives around singlehood and relationships. Encourage neutral titles. Like I said, if you have a workplace, just call people Miss or Mr. or their first names or whatever, or like their teachers, headmaster or head teacher or professor, or just use terms that are neutral in terms of relationship. Also try to have events, like, so I'm talking about in the workplace and like in your social circles. Try to have events that are neutral in general too, so that are open to married and single people, dating and single people. Like, try to make sure that it's not like all family friendly events. Like, if you have 10 events a year, make it half family events and half like regular neutral events. Or just try to make it as neutral as possible. Either way, just don't make it unbalanced. Also, I mean, this is for me, and do not support TV shows or movies that demonize single people. And so for me, that means not watching a lot of Tyler Perry's movies and TV shows. Not all of them, but like when it seems like it's like, oh, Diary of an Angry Black Woman, like I saw that back in the day. But if he came out with something like that now, not trying to see it. Like, just don't. And I'm not just picking on Tyler Perry. I mean, in general, don't watch those movies that are laughing at single people and like, oh, she has 15 days to marry somebody, because that's before her sister or brother gets married, or before her grandmother dies and she has to be married in order to inherit something, which was the plot in something where someone had to be married in order to gain an inheritance from a dead family member or something, and so they had to hurry up and get married. It's like, don't support those movies and TV shows, because it's not funny and it's only making the problem worse, especially if you're a single person. So try that could be a step in the right direction. Also, understand that claims that getting married makes people happier, healthier, and more integrated into society are grossly exaggerated or just plain wrong. So there's no research that shows you that getting married makes people happier, healthier, and more integrated in general in society. Like, you're not going to get some kind of happiness, healthiness boost from being married. Now, is there evidence that there are health effects of being married on genders, on people based on their gender? Yes. It has been shown that married men live longer than single men, and married women die sooner than single women. Can you figure that out? Figure it out. Can you think about what may be causing that? Let me think about that. In a patriarchal society like we live in, most of us live in, where the man is seen as like the head of the household and the breadwinner and the person that doesn't have to do the majority of the housework and the child work. Of course, they live longer than their single counterparts, because you have someone cooking and cleaning for you and picking up a lot of the heavy duty work, the stress work. And so when you look at the opposite end, that's why married women die sooner than single women, because they're spending so much time taking care of in these heterosexual relationships in a patriarchal society. They're spending so much time taking care of their husbands, Making sure that he has the food on the table, making sure his clothes are clean, making sure that, the kids don't bother him when he comes home, making sure that they deal with most of the child care issues if they have children, making sure that the house is clean, blah, 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 blah. Of course, they're dying earlier. Of course they are. They're stressed. They're stressed. And it's not surprising that single women would live longer than married women because because they don't have the extra responsibility and burden have to take care of someone else, another adult, another capable adult. And so, that is something that they have shown in several research, not even research reports, but research reports that have come out recently. And so I was like, that is absolutely crazy. It's so crazy. But also when you're talking about just divorce rates in general, so looking at marriages, we all know that they're saying that 50% of marriages end in divorce. Now, according to the CDC, the divorce rate in the United States is currently at 3.2 per 1,000 people, and that the rate decreased by 18% between 2008 and 2016. So we're actually seeing a lower divorce rate. So if you're thinking about that and saying, well, like I'm saying that being married doesn't automatically make you happier, healthier, and more integrated into society, but then also the fact that the divorce rates are going down. So it's not like people aren't, we're having this epidemic again of people getting divorced at higher rates, but while that may seem like good news, the marriage rate is also declining. So the divorce rate is declining, but also the marriage rate is declining, indicating that both marriage and divorce are out of reach for certain segments of the population. And so if you're going to go ahead and demonize single people and people who aren't married, that doesn't make any sense to, because the marriage rates are also going down and the divorce rates are going down. So there's people who are getting married. Those who are getting married are divorcing at lower rates, but you also have less people getting married. So you have more single people. And so in a world where you have more single people, you should treat these people with respect and not treat it like some kind of stigma that they hold until they get married and remove that stigma from themselves. But that's what I'm trying to point out to you, that particularly for Americans, and that's because of where I live, this means that Americans are staying single longer. So think about that. So all these movies and TV shows and media and all these kind of ideas about singlehood and demonizing singlehood and treating it like a disease and treating it like a punishment. And we find out that Americans are staying single longer because they're getting married at lower rates. Look at that. Number 3, about how to deal with this. So here's the question. What does it look like to embrace the freedom and potential that comes with being a single woman or being a single person? Here's some of the things that can happen if you embrace the freedom and the potential of singlehood. If you're single, I'm not saying if you're married that you have to go and get divorced and become single to enjoy this, but I'm saying for those, again, this is for my people who are single and why I wanted to get it out before Valentine's Day. Don't feel bad. Don't feel like you need to be in a relationship just because they have this, this Hollywood, not even Hollywood, this, Hallmark generated holiday that's not really a real holiday, that no one can give you the real origins of. Don't let that make you feel bad about yourself, because there are plenty of potentials, plenty of benefits of being single if you embrace it. So here's certain things that you should do. Savor your solitude and its profound rewards. Being by yourself and having time to yourself is a gift. I know this because for my friends who are married and those who have kids, they constantly talk about how they treasure the times that they have by themselves. I mean, especially those with my friends with kids, and the fact that kids have no boundaries. I realize that now on how things were in my household. But like, those memes and those stories about parents, especially mothers trying to use the bathroom and the baby's outside screaming like, "Mommy, let me in, let me in." It's like, mommy needs to poop. Okay. Mommy needs to poop, and mommy doesn't want an audience when she's pooping. Can I get some time to myself? And so you really for when you're single and you don't have kids, savor your solitude, savor it, savor your time alone. Because it has many, many profound rewards, particularly when it comes to self-care and just being able to recharge. It is something that you should definitely treasure. Embrace your relationships with the ones, not just the one. I love this. I got this from my research for this podcast. This idea of embrace your relationships, like I said about your friendships, work on your friendships and work on your relationship with yourself. This is what I was talking about. Embrace your relationships with your friends, with your family, the people around you, the people who love you, people you love back, and not just on the one, my man, my woman, my husband, my wife, my whatever, my bae. Don't focus on that. Embrace all of your relationships. And so that you have a very balanced life, so that if your relationship does not work, that you don't crumble because you don't have any other relationships with people. Also, think about valuing opportunities to pursue your interests. See this as a time to pursue your interests and passions and doing the work that you care most about, that you don't have an obligation to anybody else. And this gives you a lot more free time to focus on yourself and focus on building your career, building your brand, building yourself personally, and doing the things that you care most about that you always wanted to do. This is the time to do it. If this is the time to do it. Number 4, how do you develop your single woman action plan? So I also got this from Dr. Jessica Moore. Again, this is from different sources. How do we do that? So first things first, make a list. Make a list of the things that you like, that you enjoy doing, that you always want to do, and then go ahead and do them. And so here are some ideas to get you started if you're blanking on this list. Advance your career. Focus on your education. So if you wanted to get that promotion or get a new job, transition to a new career, great time to do so. If you wanted to always finish your degree, get a new degree, get a master's, get whatever, get a law degree, go ahead and go and do that. Focus on your education or get new skills. Work on your financial goals. This is a great time to work on your finances before somebody else comes in and, adds another wrench to it. For me, I've been spending this time, I've said it several times, working on my credit score, working on my savings, working on just building different streams of income. Like, this is the great time to do so because you are single and you have that time to yourself to work on yourself. Do what I did, travel the world. This is something I have also been doing. I told you, don't wait for nobody. Don't wait to be in a relationship, and don't wait for your friends to go and see the world. I went to Thailand. I expected to go with my friend Tania. Hey, girl. And my mother hates that I call people out, but I'm going to call her out until she stopped listening to my podcast. Hey, mommy. So she could. Let me stop. I traveled the world. I went to Thailand. I knew that the first 5 days I was going to be by myself, and I thought my friend was going to meet me. But because of the coronavirus scare and all that stuff, she decided to rebook her trip to later. And I was like, I'm going. Like, girl, you're not going to convince me to not go unless the airline cancels my trip and refunds my money. I am going. And I did. And I had a great time. It was the longest solo trip I've ever taken in my life, because all the solo trips I have taken have been really short, maybe like 4 or 5 days at the max, I think. But this was like 2 weeks by myself. But I got to see a part of the world that I've always wanted to see. I've wanted to go to Thailand for years, and I wasn't going to wait to be with somebody to go. I mean, it's so funny when I was on these excursions or going into these hotels and they're like, just one? I'm like, yeah, just one. I just need a taxi for one. I just need a table for one. I just need it. I'm the only person in my tour group. Just me. I booked it. Just me. And you'll have people being like, oh, you're by yourself. Like, I remember this, when I was taking the share taxi to the airport in Phuket. So I was traveling to Bangkok, and I got picked up in my hotel, and I was sharing with other people. And this couple that was in there first, this white man, and I was just like, oh my gosh, why is he so freaking nosy? And his wife was right next to him, and she wasn't asking me a gazillion questions. He just asked every single person that came in, he was asking a gazillion questions. And I was just like, let me act like I'm sleeping. Well, I did fall asleep eventually because it was a long ride to the airport. But he's sitting there asking me, oh, so you're by yourself? Oh, wow, that's really, wow, she's by herself. She's by herself. She's traveling by herself. And I was like, why is this a big deal? Like, if I was a man, I don't think you'd have that same issue. If I was like, like the typical backpacker, you would have no problem. But because I'm a woman, you're surprised? Or is it because I'm a black woman? that you're surprised. I don't know what it is, but I was just like, dude, he needs to stop talking to me. I was trying to be nice, and I just eventually just put my headphones on, even though my phone didn't work, just to pretend like, dude, I'm not interested in talking to you, and particularly your judgments that I'm getting from you saying, oh, she's by herself. She's by herself. Like, yes, I'm by myself. And I went to 4 different places in Thailand by myself and had a good old time. So travel the world, girl. Travel the world, guy, brother, man. If you're single, go ahead and do it. Don't wait to be in a relationship to go make your travels. And so when you do travel with your bae, it's an added bonus, not something that like you could only do if you had a bae. Focus on your spiritual and religious growth. It's a good time to work on yourself, to meditate, to find your new relationship with God or whoever you believe in, with Buddha, with Allah, with whoever, the Holy Spirit. Like, this is a good time to focus on your spiritual and religious growth. Volunteer and get involved in your community. These are all things that you can put on your list for your single woman action plan to you recreate your ideas about being single and to make the most out of your single life. And then so once you come up with the list, create SMART goals. You probably heard about this before, but if you haven't, SMART goals. SMART is a anagram. It stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. So once you have your list of things that you want to do, in order to achieve them, you need to make SMART goals so you can achieve them. So here's how you do so. Be as clear and as specific as possible with what you want to achieve. The more narrow your goal, the more you understand the steps towards to achieving it. So that's how you make it specific. That's the S part. For the M part, what evidence will prove you're making progress towards your goal? So this is, how do you measure your progress towards your goal, to achieving your goal? So you set milestones along the way that will give you the opportunity to reevaluate and course correct as needed. So if it's not working, then you figure out a different way to achieve that goal. When you achieve your milestones, remember to reward yourself in small but meaningful ways. So celebrate when you do accomplish those small goals, those milestones towards achieving your specific goal. Here is the A. So this is for achievable. Have you set an achievable goal? Have you set goals you can reasonably accomplish? Don't make a goal like, I want to be a billionaire. Yes, it's possible to become a billionaire, but if you're not even a millionaire, it's going to be a long road. And you definitely, you're not going to become a billionaire in a week or in a month. Like, that's not something that's achievable unless you win the lottery. And even then, I don't think they're giving out $1 billion payouts. So make it achievable. Set goals that are reasonable within a certain time frame. That will help you keep motivated and focused. Before you begin working towards your goal, decide whether it's something you can achieve now or whether there are additional preliminary steps you should take to become better prepared to achieve this goal. Here's the R part, the relevant. So when setting goals for yourself, consider whether or not they are relevant. Does this match up with the main goal? Do your steps match up with your main goal? Each of your goals should align with your values and larger long-term goals. If a goal doesn't contribute towards your broader objectives, you might want to rethink it. Ask yourself why the goal is important to you, how achieving it will help you, and how it will contribute towards your long-term goals. Here's the T part. This is the time base. What is your goal time frame? An end date can help provide motivation and help you prioritize. If you haven't achieved your goal in the time frame, take time to consider why. Your time frame might have been unrealistic. So again, thinking about, like, is this an achievable goal? If you're saying you want to become a billionaire within a year, and you don't have even $1 million or even a couple $100,000, how are you going to get there if that's not a reasonable time frame? If you're saying that you want to make $1 million within 10 years or whatever, that is something else. Like, especially if you have a business, like, think about your time frame. Your time frame has to be realistic. And so you might have run into unexpected roadblocks, or your goal might have been unachievable in the first place. Like, again, I'm not making no goal to become a billionaire in my lifetime, because I don't see that as something that is actually achievable, and it's actually not something that aligns up with my long-term goals. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, don't make goals that you know that you cannot achieve. It would be very impossible for you to achieve in the lifetime that you have. So here's an example of how to set a SMART goal and a single woman action plan. So for mine, Here's a part of my single woman action plan. On my list is that I want to travel to 6 of the 7 continents, and I'm excluding Antarctica. And I think you can tell that I don't like cold weather, even though I live in New England and I was born in New England. I want to do all this before I turn 40 on July 12th, 2023. So that is specific because the goal of traveling to 6 of the 7 continents is a very clear objective. There's 6 continents, North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia. Those are the ones I want to go to. And I want to do that before I turn 40. Measurable. How is it measurable? Success can be measured by traveling to a country in those continents. So for me, I reached continent number 5 last year when I visited Colombia, when I went to Cartagena, Colombia. And I picked Colombia for that reason because I knew that I had this goal of going to 5 of the 6, going to 6 of the 7 continents. And I had already been to 4. I lived in North America. I have been to Europe, and I also have been to Africa. But I had not been to South America. And I had been to Asia, sorry. And so I had not been to South America. It's right there. A lot of people were going to Cartagena. There was cheap flights. Boom. So I went. Success. Check that off my list towards reaching the 6 continents. And now I'm at 5 continents out of the 6 of my goal. Is it achievable? So when you're looking at this, if I'm making this goal, the way that I measure if it's achievable is that, do I have a valid passport? Yes, I do. And do I have the ability to travel freely? As in, I don't have any warrants on me. I don't have a job that prevents me from traveling, or I lack vacation times. All these things make it obvious that my goal of going traveling to 6 continents before I turn 40 is possible. Also, the fact that I am 36 now and I've already been to 5 continents means that I only have 1 continent left before I turn 40 in 2023, which is 3 years from now. And so I just need to go to Australia and I'm done. And so for that, thinking about, is it relevant? If judging if my goal is relevant is looking at, am I planning to travel within the next 3 years to complete my goal? Yes, I am. I travel every single year. And I usually try to go to a new place every year, if money and time permits. And so that is how I am going to achieve my goal. I've already reached 5 continents, as of this year. And, since I went to Thailand, I don't know if I can afford to go to Australia this year, but maybe I go to Australia next year, or maybe I go to Australia 2 years from now and start planning that way. Start, saving money. Start, looking at places I want to go, and within Australia, look at, the best times to travel. That is something that keeps it relevant. Can I do this? Can I actually achieve this? Yes. The time frame, the goals, so. Do I have a set deadline? Obviously, I do. I just told you I wanted to go before I turn 40 on July 12th, 2023. So that's a time frame that is workable. That's 3 years to achieve my goal. And so my final words about this, about reimagining singlehood. So here's some things I want you to remember. Remember, you have agency. Again, single life is not a disease, and it's not a punishment. It's not a life sentence. Being single is not something happening to you, but it's an opportunity to grow in yourself and your purpose. Okay, I'm gonna repeat that again. Being single is not something happening to you. Okay, you didn't catch singleness. You didn't get punished with singleness. It is an opportunity that you have to grow in yourself and your purpose. Travel, build your career, build your business, work on yourself spiritually and personally, take care of your health, work on your relationship with your family and your friends. This is an opportunity for, to do. It is not something that's happening to you. You have agency. You have the ability to change your situation, to reimagine how you see singlehood and your situation, and to live the best life that you can live, if you're with somebody or not with somebody. Because people who are single at heart, that embrace single life, being single is about living your best, most authentic, most meaningful lives. You're not single because you have issues. You're not single because you're a man eater, or you don't know how to be in long-term relationships, or your daddy didn't show you how to pick the right men, or your mama, showed you the wrong example by how she, acted in relationships. It's because it's not because you have not found the one. You are single because it's a choice. You're single because this is an opportunity in your life to work on yourself. You're single because lots of people are single, and it's okay. It's not because you have issues. It's you are embracing the time that you have to yourself. And with that, I'm done with this topic. So, I don't really have a figure this out. Maybe I do. I'll go back to that guy that was asking me all those questions. Maybe I won't. Let me think about this. I think I kind of had one. Like, I was really pissed off at that guy that kept asking me, like, oh, like, you're by yourself? And I'm like, why is this, like, figure out for me why people feel like they have the right to ask you questions. And I don't know if he felt like he had the right to ask me questions because he was a white man and I was a black woman, and we're talking about gender and race dynamics here. And because he was married or with somebody and I was by myself, like, I don't know if he felt like he had all these rights to ask me questions, but you don't have the right to ask people, especially strangers, like, questions like that. And especially when they seem to have, like, judgments, like value judgments attached to them. Like, figure out when we thought that was okay to do so. Also, another thing I want you guys to figure out for me is, what is the point of catfishing? I think I might have to do an episode about catfishing, figuring out if catfishing, what is the point of catfishing? I do not get it. I have now become very, very adept at figuring out who catfishes are now, with the help of my friend Sheena, who usually I send her. I'm like, oh, girl, this guy's cute. And he sent me a message, but he doesn't have a lot of posts and he doesn't have a lot of friends. And I'm like, is this guy a catfish? And she'd be like, it's a catfish, right? Or this person's a real person. And I just don't understand the whole point of trying to catfish people. Like, especially, I see that it's quite common among, like, military men. So, like, people will take, like, the pictures of, like, someone in the military who's probably actively, like, on a base, and they will, like, create a whole like, Instagram or social media profile. But the way you can tell that it's a catfish is that they have numbers at the end. So it's like John Smith 213, and it's like, why does John Smith have to be 213? And then you look at the post and all of the pictures were posted on the same day. Catfish. But then as soon as you add them as a friend, or they add you and you follow them back, and they're immediately, in your direct messages, like, hello, beautiful, hello. And it's like, that's how I block people. I'm like, what is the point of this? Like, I know you're not real. Okay. You ain't got no videos. You ain't got I know you're not real. What is the purpose of this? Okay. I watch clips of catfish and sometimes an episode. I know how this game works, and I don't understand the purpose. Like, where are you planning to go with this catfishing, profile? Where are we trying to go with this? What is the point of this? Because you're only making it worse. I might be single, but I ain't desperate, and I am not dumb. Okay. And, like, you telling me hello, beautiful is not making my day, because I didn't ask you to send me that message. I didn't ask at all. And if you really wanted to engage in a conversation with me, you would start off with something that is actually concrete. Like, oh, I really liked your picture of you, in front of the big Buddha in Phuket. How is that? Like, like, you start off with an actual conversation starter instead of a hello, beautiful, that you probably cut and paste and sent to every single female that decided to follow you back. So, with that, I am done. I appreciate you guys for sticking with me with this podcast. As of February 22nd, 2020, my podcast is a year old. I've celebrated the first year of my podcast. Although I wasn't posting consistently until, like, end of July, early August, when I started my podcast course. But it doesn't matter. Either way, my podcast premiered last year on February 22nd. The podcast is officially a year old. And if you'd like to reward my little baby or give my baby a gift, you can gift my baby with a rating and review on whatever platform you're listening to. If you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts, if you're listening to it on Google Podcasts or Spotify or Stitcher or SoundCloud, wherever you're listening to this, go ahead and please leave a rating and review for my baby, Figure Out Your Life with Toya T podcast. It's been a year. We're still here. We're still figuring it out. We're growing. We're reaching new people. And I'm getting messages from people I know and people I don't know all the time about how they appreciate this podcast. And that was the whole point of this. Like, I really want to grow this as a brand, and I'm learning at the same time as, focusing on other parts of my life. And this has really been a really great practice for me in how to just get things done and stop focusing on perfection, stop waiting on the perfect situation, because that's never going to happen. And so that's what I've learned from a year of podcasting, that there's plenty of room to grow, plenty of ways to learn things about myself and learn things about life. And so I really appreciate you guys who have supported my podcast from day one, or whatever day that you supported it from. If you're listening to this podcast and this is your first episode, thank you. Thank you very much. If you really enjoy the podcast, and again, if you want to give a gift to my baby, share this podcast with others that you think will be interested in this podcast and the content of this podcast. If you have any comments or questions or anything you want me to cover, do not hesitate to reach out to me. All of my contact information is in the show notes. And so you can email me, you can hit me up on the Facebook group, or you can hit me up on Instagram, and I will try my best to respond to you as quickly as possible. But again, thank you everybody. And with that, I want to wish everyone a very blessed and happy and healthy morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time you're listening to this, wherever you are. I just want you guys to just be you and be happy with being you, whether you're single or you're not single. Okay. And I will talk to you guys next week, or maybe in a couple days. I'll talk to you soon. Let's just say that. I'll talk to you soon. All right. Bye.